Hey, what's going on YouTube? So today I want to do a video that's a little bit different. I wanted to do my top 25 in the next 5 years. So basically what this is the teams that I think are going to be the 25 best over the next 5 years until the year 2020. Not necessarily the most wins, just the teams that are going to be ranked in the top 25 the most, longest, highest, things like that. So go ahead and start with my 10 teams that I think are going to be just outside the top 25. Start with number 10, Penn State, 9, South Carolina, 8, Missouri, 7, Florida, 6, Arizona, 5, Boise State, 4, West Virginia, 3, Duke, 2, Nebraska, and 1, Arkansas. So a couple of these teams, I know a lot of people have riding the ship a little bit more than maybe the faith that I'm putting into them. Florida, one of the biggest college football powers over the last 10 years. I don't think that they're going to find success really anytime soon. I think it's going to be a long tenure for Jim McElwain. I don't think he's going to do very good. I don't doubt that he's a good coach. I just don't think he's a good fit for Florida. Florida's had a little bit of trouble recruiting over the last 2-3 years as well. They don't have a solid situation at quarterback yet. They don't even know who's starting this year, and if it is Treon Harris, he's only got 1 or 2 years of eligibility left. He didn't look that solid when he played last year. The defense has been good over the last, I'd say, 5 years. Dante Fowler led a pretty stout defense last year. Vernon Hargraves could be the best defensive player in the country, probably the best cornerback. But basically, I don't think that they're gonna right the ship by the time 2020 rolls around. Few other ones, Arizona. So I'm very high on Arizona this year. They have a very solid freshman class. I think that Anu Solomon and Nick Wilson will head up a pretty stout offense for the next 3-4 years. I don't think that they'll stay in the top 25. I don't think Rich Rodriguez's team is going to be consistent enough to stay there. But I do think they'll hover around there for a little bit. So moving to the top 25 now. 25, I got Arizona State, 24, Oklahoma State, 23, Stanford, 22, Oklahoma, 21, UCLA, 20, Miami, 19, Texas A&M, 18, Ole Miss, 17, Michigan State, 16, Wisconsin, 15, TCU, 14, Notre Dame, 13, Texas, 12, Clemson, 11, Tennessee, 10, Michigan, 9, Georgia, 8, Baylor, 7, LSU, 6, USC, 5, Oregon, 4, Florida State, 3, Auburn, 2, Alabama, and 1, Ohio State. So if you guys notice any pattern, it's probably that I have a lot of the blue bloods up top. Teams aren't really doing well at all right now. Tennessee, Michigan, 2 good examples. I am high on Tennessee. They are a team that I think are going to be pretty good this year. I think they'll be a 9-win team, and I think they're only going to get better from there. Butch Jones is the best coach they've had in a while, and he's shown nothing but improvement since he's been there. I think Tennessee would be a top 10 team in years to come. They're already a top 25 team, at least to start this year. Michigan, I think it's going to be a rough year this year, but Jim Harbaugh's proven pretty much wherever he goes that he can ride a ship pretty quickly. Stanford turned into a championship contender every year, a national power while he was there. And he's got even more to work with at Michigan than he did at Stanford, so I think it'll be an even better tenure at Michigan for Jim Harbaugh, plus just a perfect place for him. He's been able to recruit very well so far, and I think it'll be good for the Big Ten to get back to the battle of Michigan and Ohio State at the top. So we're going to move back down the list a little bit. I start off the list with Arizona State. Arizona State's been a top 25 team the last couple of years. I think as long as Todd Graham's there, he's had a pretty good offense every year he's been there. I think Arizona State will hover around the top of the Pac-12 South for a little while. Oklahoma State, a team that's kind of an every other year team. I think they'll continue that way. Mason Rudolph might have a pretty consistent tenure under Mason Rudolph, but I think Oklahoma State will be another team that's in and out of the top 25. They'll have their years where they're inside the top 10, and they'll have their years where they don't even finish inside the top 25. So Stanford's a hard team to predict. They had a pretty rough year last year, but also I think they could win the Pac-12 this year. If you guys saw my college football playoff prediction video, I have them inside my college football playoff, but I don't think they'll be consistent enough to be inside the top 20. So OU, obviously maybe the best program of all time. A lot of people probably will not like me having OU at 22. I think that they'll have their years, but OU's been on a downward spiral for a couple years now. Last year was a brutal year. Year before, yeah, they beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. That was a great year. But aside from that, you just had a little bit of trouble in the Big 12 the last few years. So I think it'll be a little while before they're able to prove it or improve and start being a trending up team again. UCLA, team that under Jim Moore has been pretty consistent. I think that they're going to stay right around the 20 area most years. Miami, a team that I have a lot of faith in. I think they'll right the ship eventually. They always prove. Even if Miami's always had down years, but I think as soon as they move Al Golden out of the program, if they've managed to find the right coach, install the right culture again, start recruiting South Florida like everyone knows they can do, then I think Miami will get back inside the top 25. Michigan State is a team that has been a top 5 team pretty much, if not top 5, then top 10 every year for the last like 3-4 years. I don't think they're going to stay that way. I think they'll still be a good team, but I think they'll start falling back down a little bit as Michigan starts working its way back up. Texas is a team that is just, I think, getting nothing but better right now. Charlie Strong is implementing a culture that Texas needs, is a culture that Texas will thrive around, and really make the players earn the Longhorn that they wear on their helmet, and I think Texas will get back to being a top 15 team again within the next 4 or 5 years. Tennessee, I kind of explained this earlier. I think that they'll eventually get back up to the top of the SEC East. I think that them and Georgia will pretty much run the show for the next 5 years. So move up to Georgia. I think that pretty much every year they have top 10 hype. Normally finish the year with 1, 2, maybe even 3 losses. As long as Mark Richt's there, I think that trend's going to continue. Move up the list a little bit to LSU. LSU, one of the best teams over the last, I'd say, 15 years in college football. Won national championship. Been to a couple more. Been to a couple SEC title games as well. I think that LSU, with all the recruiting success they've had over the last 2-3 years, if they can find a consistent quarterback, then I think they'll get back to the point of being a championship contender year in and year out. USC, the recruiting restrictions are getting lifted off, so a lot of people are starting to see what USC can do. Again, I think Cody Kessler will have a pretty bang-up year this year. I think they'll have no problem recruiting another quarterback to come in and pretty much just do as well as anyone expects for USC to do. Move back to how USC was kind of in the mid-2000s, around that area. Move up the list a little bit to Auburn. I think that Auburn is a team that's going to have pretty consistent success under Gus Malzahn over the next 5 years. Jeremy Johnson should have a decent tenure. He's got a lot of hype this year. If he stays for 2-3 more years, then I think he can be a solid quarterback for them. I think that Auburn can have a pretty consistent reign of being a championship contender, a SEC title contender year in, year out for the next 3 years, and then hopefully replace him, and then they can basically do the same thing that they've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, winning one national championship and almost winning another. Alabama and Ohio State, 2 best teams last year, I think. Alabama didn't make it to the national championship, but they did compete with Ohio State better than Oregon did. I think that Alabama, with all the recruiting success they've had, as long as Nick Saban's there, they're going to be a top 5 team every year. Ohio State, and same thing. As long as Urban Meyer's there, they're going to have recruiting success year in, year out, so they really don't have to really don't have to rebuild. They just have to reload. Talent's always going to be there, and I think that Ohio State and Alabama will be the 2 teams that'll pretty much be the heavyweights of college football over the next 5 years. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, a little bit different type of video today. Obviously, this is a really hard thing to predict. You never know what's going to happen. When you try to think of teams that are going to be good in the future, obviously everyone, their mind jumps to a lot of the blue bloods of college football. A lot of people are always wondering when some of the best teams of the last 30, 40 years are going to start retaking their title as the best teams in college football. College football seems to be running a lot smoother. It seems to be a lot more fun to watch when the blue bloods are back up at the top, and they're always the ones that you can always count on to have success in recruiting, and then you always think that they're going to have a bright future. So yeah, that was pretty much my methodology for picking these top 25 teams. If you have any teams that you think are going to be dark horses to start sliding in the top 25 in the next couple of years, teams you think will maybe be like the Boise State and the TCU back in the day, I'd say a couple years ago before TCU joined the Big 12, any non-Power 5 teams. Definitely comment those below. I'm always like hearing what people think will be the dark horses year in and year out. But yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.